Oh, there she is. You look different. Come on up. Come on up. Come on up. I love that we have this bus as a backdrop. As you know, school is getting ready to start, and I've been very concerned about pedestrian safety in our city and across our country. So I'm joined here today by Rochester School District Superintendent Dr. Carmine Peluso, Rochester Police Department Lieutenant Greg Bello, the Department of Environmental Services Assistant Commissioner Kapute Okanse, and the interim Executive Director of Reconnect Rochester, Mary Starpoli. It's hard to believe that fall is actually in the air and children will be returning to school next week. I mean, I feel like summer just accelerated and hit us in the face like a ton of bricks. But next week is the start of school. So there's not a better time to discuss pedestrian and roadway safety. The team here at the city, along with our partners, are working across many initiatives to make our streets safer. And with accidents and hit and runs we've experienced this summer, I need to get everyone's attention on this topic. We need everyone's attention on this topic. Next week, in Rochester alone, nearly 25,000 students will be headed back to school. Many of them will walk, ride a bike to school, or get there on the school bus. They have a right to make it there safely. They have the right to cross the street without fear. This is not only a life and death issue, but a quality of life issue. I'm here today to ask every driver in the city to do a few simple things. Number one, slow down. Driving at reduced speeds improves your ability to react, and when speeds climbs, so does death rates. Second, obey the rules of the road. By law, you must share the road with cyclists and pedestrians. And three, when driving, and I know this is hard for everyone because we're in this interconnected world, get off your phone, period. Pedestrians have the right of way in or out of the crosswalk, yet still we've had fatalities involving pedestrians who followed all these rules. I'll remind everyone, especially our young people heading to school, when crossing a street, use crosswalks, pay attention to pedestrian signals, and look both ways before you cross. And I'd like to thank and recognize the many school crossing guards who are gearing up to help keep our students safe next week. And with that, I'd like to invite Superintendent Carmine Peluso to share some additional perspectives about Rochester City School District's efforts to get kids to and from school safely. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to address a matter of utmost importance: the safety of our children on their way to school. As the school year begins, we are reminded of our collective responsibility to ensure that every child's journey to and from school is a safe one. Every day during the school year, I observe a parent walking their child to school, pushing a stroller with a younger sibling. It's a scene filled with love and determination. The safety of these families is particularly close to our hearts, and we must ensure their safety along our streets. Our partnership with the Mayor's Office and the county demonstrates our joint dedication to creating safer pathways for our students. By pooling our resources and knowledge, we can make impactful changes that benefit our entire community. We are asking you to pay attention to crosswalks that signal a haven and sidewalks that invite exploration, reminding us all to slow down, look out, and protect. We share a sacred goal to protect our children as they embark on their educational journeys. The sight of parents walking with strollers symbolizes our unity, determination, and love for our community's future. Every child's safety is paramount, and we stand together to ensure it. Pedestrian safety is a lesson in empathy, a testament to values we wish to instill in our children. We ask that you drive with caution as our children arrive to and from our schools. These moments should be marked by the laughter of friends and the joy of learning, and not the worry of their safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. You know, the numbers are staggering. If you look between 2017 and 2021, the number of 2,475 injuries that we've had just in this community, and 62 deaths involving motor vehicle, motor vehicles and pedestrians occurred in Rochester between 2017 and 2021. Think about that, 62 deaths. So, you know, 1.4 times per day, a pedestrian or cyclist is involved in an accident. Um, I do worry about pedestrian safety and the behaviors of some of the drivers in our city, and as I said, it increases my worry. I've seen far too many videos. Just one recently with the motorcycle that I watched. Um, that was just last week, where there was a hit and run with that motorcyclist who's fighting for their life. In my past 18 months in office, I've seen way too many of those. Lots this summer. Reckless driving, leaving scenes of accidents. These drivers are beyond dangerous, and they need to be apprehended. I know we're not alone in generating a parade of headlines about people dying due to driver negligence, but this is our city, and we need to work together to hold dangerous drivers accountable. So I'm going to invite Lieutenant Greg Bello to the podium to share some statistics and details on some of the hit and runs cases that we need help to solve. The only way that we can solve some of these hit and run cases is by having the public come forward, or the individual who did the hit and run to come into a conscious and come to have a conscious moment in their mind to step forward and take accountability for hurting innocent people. So with that, Lieutenant Bello, if you can come forward and give us a few remarks related to this pedestrian safety.
Thank you, Mayor. So in the past year, we've had over 200 incidents in our community in which a vehicle has struck a pedestrian or a bicyclist. 14 of those were tragically fatal. Additionally, of those over 200, 77 of those, so nearly a third, the driver fled the scene. And that's where we're looking at right now, is looking for help from the community to catch these drivers, to catch these people that leave, these motor vehicles that strike a pedestrian, strike a bicyclist, and leave them injured, leave them dying in the roadway. Recent examples the mayor just brought up just last week. We had a motorcyclist that was struck with serious injuries at Hudson and Upper Falls, and the vehicle left him there. Thankfully, other bystanders were able to call 911 and get him the help he needed, that life-saving help. But we need that public help to solve other cases. A case I've talked about a lot lately has been 19-year-old Jared Jones last summer, August 3rd of last summer. The anniversary was just a few weeks ago. Riding his bicycle home on Lake Avenue, in the 2800 block of Lake Avenue, and gets hit by a black Dodge Ram pickup truck. Left with critical injuries. The driver didn't stop. Driver took off. And there's Jared left lying to die in the roadway. And I've met with both Jared's parents, his father, multiple times. And this is a family that lost their son laying there dead in the roadway. And nobody knows if he had gotten that help earlier, if that driver had stopped and gotten him that medical help, whether he would have survived that night. But instead, he was left there to die. So we're looking for, I'll use that case specifically, but we're looking for a 2013 black Dodge Ram pickup truck that struck Jared and killed Jared. And we're looking for the community's help to help us find that vehicle, or who was driving that vehicle, or who helped repair that vehicle, because those vehicles frequently get repaired. So we're looking for help from the community to call in these, but also looking for help from auto repair shops and collision shops that are repairing these vehicles with suspicious damage. They're potentially from hit and runs. So our investigators, again, we determined that it's that black Dodge Ram Sport 2013, and we need that community help. And we need the community's help to solve cases such as Jared's and bring justice to those that leave people dying in the roadways. Additionally, with the upcoming start of the school year, as we're standing in front of a school, we urge drivers to slow down and exercise extreme caution around school buses and around our kids that are walking to and from school. 25,000, is that the number I just heard? Yeah. Kids that are predominantly walking to and from school. They take the bus, but typically crossing the street and going around these vehicles. So please slow down and help save our children. Beyond that, especially the high school students, we've got the new electric scooters all over the city. We've seen several collisions already over the summer since that program has started. And as we go through those collisions, several have been hit and runs, several have been caught on video, and the vast majority of them have been caused by the car, not the scooter rider. And so we really need these cars to pay attention, and the operators of cars to pay attention to these scooter operators, these kids. Now it's going to be teenagers riding scooters to and from school. So please, again, scooters add a new dimension They're obligated to ride on the roadways, not the sidewalks. So please pay attention to them. And then finally, from an enforcement angle, from the police department side of things, our traffic enforcement unit will be out there conducting details around the schools and holding those that break those laws and endanger our children and hold them accountable for it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And there are so many other cases like Jared Jones, who was, as you know, a recent graduate of the School of the Arts who lost his life. Another heartbreaking case I heard was a woman who was doing work on her. They were doing work at her home, and she was just on the roadway and got hit and died right there. And that case was, if you remember, that received a lot of attention because they caught the individual and then he was released. A couple of you reported on that. So these are cases that all of us can identify with because we all are affected by this, and we really need people to step forward as it relates to those statistics that Lieutenant Bello mentioned. And I always want to tell people, if you have information, you can call 311 or Crime Stoppers or use our Reported app, which has become very, very popular, and you can do that anonymously. And as I mentioned earlier, teams here at the city are working diligently across many initiatives to address pedestrian safety. Over the past months, we've done some notable work in several of the city's neighborhoods to assess and adjust our infrastructure to increase pedestrian and traffic safety. In fact, in my monthly Mayor on the Block walks, this topic has become an important focus. We walked in the North Clinton Avenue neighborhood, and then our teams added crosswalks and bump outs in that area that clearly needed it after talking to residents in that area. And earlier this summer, my team and I visited Thurston Road right after the tragic accident that took the life of 6-year-old Ryan Grantham Jr. Many of you remember that story. That was this summer. So we continue to work with county and state transportation authorities to make improvements to that stretch in the neighborhood. Pedestrian-friendly streets are critical. Gone are the days when cities were designed only for cars. People are increasingly living car-optional lives. We are expanding ways to get from point A to point B, as Lieutenant Bello said, adding electric scooters and bicycles, which are proving to be extremely, extremely popular. You see these scooters all over the place. So I'd like to have Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Services, Kapute Akanse, to come give you an update on some of these activities, particularly as it relates to our active transportation plan and micro-mobility programs that are important and are directly related to this aspect of pedestrian safety that we're talking about today. Kapute?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everybody. So as we know that 1 out of 4 households in the city of Rochester doesn't have access to a car and relies on walking, biking, friends or family, or buses for daily travel. We also want to encourage people to use green and sustainable options to go to from their homes and destinations throughout the city without driving whenever possible. To that, our active transportation plan was completed this past June. It is Rochester's first dedicated plan intended to guide future investments in the infrastructure for pedestrians, as well as people who use bikes, use mobility aids, or ride the bus. The plan has 3 major goals. 1, to improve the traffic safety by reducing traffic deaths and injuries. 2, to make our streets accessible to pedestrians of all ages and abilities. And 3, to provide more options for people to get around the city safely and comfortably without driving. The plan prioritizes improvements to the physical environment for 4 priority populations: disabled people, Black, brown, and people of color, people without access to a car, and low-income people. By prioritizing improvements to areas with high concentration of priority populations, the city can make a bigger impact on road safety in a shorter amount of time. The plan came from an extensive public engagement process. That process included improvements to 1, capacity of the city to implement the plan, engagement to get all residents involved in the implementation of the plan, safety to help eliminate serious and fatal crashes, design standards, routine processes, and operations to help improve active transportation goals, pedestrian and accessibility project pathways to help target investment where they all have the most impact, and land use connections to active transportation. The plan also recommends 18 miles of safety-focused pedestrian improvements. These include improvements at intersections, mid-block crossings, transit stops, and other high pedestrian use areas. What we're doing internally in the Department of Environmental Services on all our transportation projects, we evaluate opportunities to improve pedestrian safety. On each project, we analyze pedestrian safety history and consider improvements to make it safer and easier for pedestrians to use our streets, such as walking routes to schools. We also consider traffic calming measures to ensure that driver safety is at optimum. We also lead initiatives specifically focused on improving conditions for pedestrians, improving our pedestrian safety action plan, which upgrades hundreds of crossings throughout the city, which I'm sure many of you have seen. The active transportation plan will help us to continue to build on this important work that we're doing. We continue to actively seek grant funding to implement the recommendations and the plan and to invest in pedestrian safety. Ultimately, by making roads safer and pedestrians, transit riders, and cyclists, everybody benefits, even those that are driving. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Kapute. So this is a major focus of our administration and will continue to be because we know it's so very, very important. And you know, this year, for example, I was accepted to the Mayor's Institute on Pedestrian Safety, a partnership with AARP, Livable Communities, and the Smart Growth of America. And this opportunity enables us to learn from experts in the field and my peers across the U.S. about the best strategies to keep our streets safer and citizens out of harm's way. But as I've said before, it's not me, it's we. And we rely on our partnerships. City, county, regional organizations, and citizens partner with us and provide input to ensure that our plans and work, we do address this holistically. We regularly work alongside Reconnect Rochester. Reconnect Rochester probably has been up at this podium with me talking about pedestrian safety, scooters, our active transportation plan probably at least 3, 4, 5 times this year alone, not counting last year. And they have been a great partner in this. And they are involved with our active transportation plan. We include the community's voice, and that's why it's so important for us to have Mary here, Mary Starpoli, as who's the interim executive director of Reconnect Rochester. And I just want Mary just to say a few words about the importance of this from the community's perspective and Reconnect's perspective, who does such great work in this area. So, Mary.
Thank you for those kind words. And we are proud to partner with the city on pedestrian safety and many other things. As we head into the new school year, what's on our minds at Reconnect Rochester is Ryan Grantham Jr., who won't be heading back to school. Our hearts are still with his very devastated family, his siblings, his friends, his teachers who will be missing him. RJ, or Bear, as he was called, was just 6 years young when he was hit and killed crossing the street on Thurston Road back in June, as the mayor mentioned. His older sister was with him and witnessed him being hit, and he died in his mother's arms when she rushed to his side. As a mother, I think about the horror of that, and it's not something that anyone should ever have to endure. RJ is one of 7 precious lives that have been lost already this year to road violence, who were hit and killed while walking. And we've already lost 4 cyclists in Monroe County this year. So we are on a very sad record pace in 2023. There's no doubt that people are driving faster and more recklessly on our city streets, and it's putting everyone at risk and inflicting tremendous harm. For a recent project, we put out a speed radar on Arnett Boulevard. This is a street that's lined with residential homes, with kids playing, lots of people out walking and crossing the street to the Arnett Cafe and the library. And in just the few days that we were collecting speed data on Arnett Boulevard, we clocked hundreds of drivers traveling down that street at over 40 miles per hour, 45 miles per hour, far in excess of the city's 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, and some in extreme excess, with the highest speed clocked at 79 miles per hour. So with those kind of conditions on our streets, it's really just a matter of time before tragedy occurs, and it did when RJ lost his life just a few blocks away from there. We seriously appreciate that this mayor and his administration is passionate about pedestrian safety and determined to find solutions and explore new ways to address what's going on with better street design and making the kinds of investments you heard about in pedestrian infrastructure that will help protect people. But the city of Rochester can only do so much. So we are here to ask every citizen to see it as your responsibility to protect the lives of people who are out walking and biking, and especially the kids who will be heading back to school starting next week. We have to take more care, especially around school buses. I have a daughter who walks to the bus stop, and her life is in your hands. We're all responsible for each other and each other's kids. We all need to act more responsibly and more consciously when we get behind the wheel of a 4,000-pound machine that can be really lethal. So we have a little variation on how to practice safe driving practices. So we ask you to practice the 3 S's, to slow down, which of course is the biggest one because speed kills. The chance of a person surviving a hit is 95% with a car traveling 20 miles per hour, 55% at 30 miles per hour, and drops to just a 15% survival rate when a person is hit at 40 miles per hour. So second, always be scanning for people walking and biking. And third, when you're passing someone on a bike, give them at least 3 feet of space, please. Our friends at Healthy Kids led a coalition group to come up with a public awareness campaign called Drive to Be Better. You can go to the website, drive, the number 2, the letter B, better.org, to get educated, to take a pledge to practice the 3 S's, and to order a lawn sign that helps us get the word out there. So let's do better, let's drive to be better, and keep our kids safe this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's practice. Very well said, Mary. Let's practice those 3 S's, and please check out Drive to Be Better. We get a lot of our information from that site. That is a great site, Drive to Be Better, and remember those 3 S's for sure. I hope that everyone takes away today, and we're ending right on time because it's just starting to sprinkle a little bit, but I hope that everyone takes away from today that we are working every day to address this issue of safer streets for people using all forms of transportation, and that every one of us has a responsibility to each other and to our kids heading to and from school to drive safely. It does not have to be this way. And it starts with our individual choices that we make, but it also starts with us saying something to our friend or spouse when you see them driving fast or getting angry or having that road rage, to saying, hey, chill out. It'll be okay. Let's let this person cross the street safely in the crosswalk. Let's not get upset with the bicyclist that you think might be traveling slow. That if you see a bike lane, it's a bike lane for a reason. It's a bike lane, not a car lane. So stay out of the bike lanes. And with that, I believe that we can improve these very, very sad numbers that aren't just affecting Rochester but our country. But we have to do better because our future depends on that. And with that, I will take on-topic questions first about pedestrian safety back to school, and then any off-topics that you might have. But we're going to do it quick because I don't want anyone to get wet and mess your hair up. So, on-topic questions about this? Anyone?
I have an on-topic question, Mayor. Partnership for at least the first
Yep.
part of school.
Yeah. So in fact, we just met Monday. We just followed up Monday on many things, and the superintendent can talk about some of that. You will see barriers, and the superintendent can speak to this at some of the schools for cars. But in terms of our RPD presence, the Rochester School Board just voted to have officers at arrival and dismissal again, and City Council is to vote on that intermunicipal agreement at its September meeting in I think 2 weeks as well. So you'll see that. So there'll continue to be that type of cooperation, because you're right. Last year, if you remember, we saw a bunch of cars. Franklin was one, Monroe was another one, where we saw kids driving recklessly, coming in, driving their cars on there. So that is another added layer that we have to deal with in addition to this. And that requires a different approach than what we're doing there, but that's important. Same schools, right? I think we're asking for Monroe and
So
Franklin.
we have partnered with, for the year, for arrival and dismissal for 5 police officers, right? And what we'll continue to do is look at where we're seeing incidents, and then we will work with the city to determine where those schools will go. We have a great relationship. We talk on a consistent basis, and if we find an area that seems to be a little bit more to be receiving a few more incidents, we'll move cars around, but we will protect 5 cars, usually mostly at our secondary campuses. We also invested, and this board invested $7 million last year to infrastructure upgrades. So you'll start to see some concrete barriers, some other ways, gates, fencings that we'll put in over time to kind of fortify and strengthen the campus and make sure that they're safe and students are safe while they're on the school grounds.
Is there any new initiatives for your own security officers inside the school?
So obviously, continuous ongoing training with our staff and our school safety officers, and our work with Pathways to Peace. So continuously training, strengthening our connections with the units and our building principals as well to kind of flow communication to ensure that we're getting the right information and the right intel when needed, and we're sharing that with RPD when necessary. So those are continuously ongoing, and we invested in a significant increase in pay for our safety security officers to ensure that we have the right people in our schools with our children.
Do you have enough of them? Are there openings?
We are completely staffed. Oh yes, always. I think you come to our CSD to teach our children and where you're going to have the largest impact. And I think our teachers do it out of their heart, and they come and give their best every single day. And obviously, we want to make sure that we're protecting the children and the staff as well. So absolutely, I think it will help with recruitment and retention for our staff.
Teachers Association said they're 100 teachers short this year.
Any more questions on the? You can come back to that question. We'll get back to you on the teacher shortage. But any more questions on pedestrian safety related items? And the other thing I would add too to the in addition to the physical safety and the car safety is we've also expanded the Pathways to Peace program into our schools. We have a very robust school-based program there as possible. Okay, off-topic questions for me and the superintendent. There was a question about teachers, which I can't answer because I don't run the schools, thank God. So the superintendent, she had a question about.
So we're no different than anyone that's facing teacher shortages across the country, especially in high areas such as special education and bilingual education. So those 2 areas are obviously areas that we are continuing to look, advocate, and recruit for. That being said, we've also put in plans where we're working with teachers to earn those certificates while they're working with us. So we're working with them to plan, we'll hire them, work with the colleges to ensure that they earn their certification and they then retain with us. So yes, we'll continue to have shortages. It's no different than any other year. We will fill those with substitutes and people working towards their certification.
So there will not be like increased class sizes or anything like that.
So we have a contract and we file the contract on our class sizes. So we've welcomed 32 children, school-age children, from over the last few weeks. We're working with their families for placement, right? We talk with the families and provide them with some options, and they'll end up, depending on what their choices are, in some of our bilingual programs or our international academy. But those are conversations that we have individually. We're meeting with the families, and then we place them in schools based on where we have seats available and where they would like to attend. So the county and DocGo in the city are handling all of that. That's nothing that the district handles.
You mentioned that you have a shortage of bilingual teachers.
We are filling seats. As you know, our enrollment has been declining over the last several years. So having families come in and fill the seats is obviously a good thing for us, and we're very excited to welcome those families and retain those families for hopefully the duration of their children's education. But we also, these aren't areas that we haven't been in before. You know, so we provide, if it's bilingual para supports or bilingual teacher assistant support. So we find other ways to support education if we can't find that bilingual certified teacher.
Okay. Any other off topics before we wrap up? Any others? Okay. All right. We're good. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And please remind everyone to please drive safe. And I hope that news media, that you continue to cover these stories of their families as they try to get justice for these folks that have been involved in hit and runs. So thank you so much. Thank you.